The millionaire reveals he's bankrupt at the altar. The bride makes a decision no one expected at the altar. Jack nervously adjusted the tie of his suit. At 38, he had built an empire, and his name was stamped on the main luxury developments in the city. At least that's what everyone thought. Emma entered the hall to the sound of an orchestrated version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Her dress, exclusively designed by one of the most renowned stylists in the country, sparkled almost as much as her smile. When they finally stood face to face, something in Jack's eyes made Emma feel that something wasn't right. There was a shadow, an anguish she had never seen before. The minister began the ceremony with words about love and commitment, about the union of two souls who found each other amidst the chaos of life. But when the time came to pronounce the vows, Jack raised his hand, interrupting the clergyman. "I need to say something first," he announced, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent hall. Looking directly into Emma's eyes, he took a deep breath. "I can't continue with this charade. I can't promise to give you a life that I'm not in a position to offer," he began, his voice trembling. "The truth is, I'm bankrupt, Emma. Completely. Bankrupt." A murmur of astonishment swept through the hall. Martha, Emma's mother, placed her hand on her chest while her father, Thomas Fields, a respected businessman in the hotel industry, turned red with anger. "My last 3 ventures had serious problems. Investors withdrew their capital. Banks are pressuring me, and I have nothing left but debts," continued Jack, now facing not just Emma but all those present. "I sold my apartment, my car, everything to try to save the company, but it wasn't enough. This suit I'm wearing is rented." Tears began to roll down Jack's face while shock spread among the guests. Some were already getting up, whispering, pointing, judging. "I was going to tell you after the wedding, but I realized that would be unfair. You deserve to know who you're marrying. You deserve to make this choice with your eyes open," he concluded, lowering his gaze, waiting for the rejection that would surely come. The silence that followed was deafening. All breaths seemed to have been suspended as they awaited Emma's reaction. She remained motionless for a few seconds, absorbing the impact of those words. Her wedding dress, once light as a feather, now seemed to weigh tons. Then, to everyone's surprise, especially Jack's, she stepped forward and took his hands in hers. "I didn't fall in love with your money, Jack," she said with surprising firmness. "I fell in love with you, with the man who wakes up at 5 in the morning to see the sunrise, with the man who silently donates to causes he believes in, with the man who looks at me as if I were the only person in the world." A collective sigh of relief and emotion swept through the hall. "So," she continued, turning to the minister, "can we continue with the ceremony?" The minister, still dumbfounded, nodded and resumed the vows. Emma's yes resonated clear and firm, while Jack's came out between tears of gratitude and love. But the story was just beginning, and no one could imagine what would happen soon. During the reception, which was taking place in the same hall now transformed for the party, the comments wouldn't stop. In one corner, Martha was talking intensely with her husband. "This is unacceptable, Thomas. Our daughter married to a bankrupt man? What will they say in the society columns? And all the money we invested in this wedding?" Thomas ran his hand through his grey hair, clearly disturbed. "Calm down, Martha. We have to think carefully. The important thing is that no one knows about our situation. If the news of Jack's bankruptcy spreads along with our financial problems, it will be the end of everything." What they didn't know was that Ryan, Jack's cousin and best man, was close enough to hear the conversation. Ryan, a renowned photographer, known for his explosive temperament, narrowed his eyes and decided to stay alert. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Meanwhile, in the center of the hall, Emma and Jack were receiving congratulations from the few guests who remained after the bombshell revelation. Many had made a point of leaving discreetly, avoiding the embarrassment of facing the couple or perhaps fearing they would ask them for money. Mrs. Josephine, Emma's maternal grandmother, a 78-year-old lady with a lively and perceptive look, approached the couple with slow steps, leaning on her carved wooden cane. "My grandson," she said, addressing Jack with genuine affection. "Money comes and goes, but character remains. You showed more dignity today than many of the rich folks who ran out of here have shown in their entire lives." She then turned to her granddaughter. "And you, my Emma, have always known how to choose well. I'm proud, but be aware. Not everything is as it seems in this marriage." Before Emma could ask what she meant by that, the orchestra began to play, announcing the moment of the newlyweds' first dance. Jack extended his hand to his now wife, inviting her to the center of the dance floor. That's when the lights abruptly went out. For a moment, everyone thought it was part of the party choreography, but then the main screen in the hall, which until then had only shown photos of the couple, lit up on its own. An electronically distorted voice filled the room. "A marriage based on lies is destined to fail." And then images began to play. They were recordings of conversations. The first showed Thomas and Martha Fields, Emma's parents, in their home office. "This is our only way out, Martha," Thomas was saying in the recording. "If Emma marries Jack, we'll have access to his capital. We can save our hotels from bankruptcy, pay our debts. She doesn't even need to know we're practically destitute." Martha nodded, adding, "And if she resists, you know how stubborn our daughter is." Then we remind her of everything we've done for her career, the contacts we arranged, the doors we opened. She owes us this. The video continued, showing other conversations, all with the same theme. Emma's parents were planning to use her marriage to Jack as a lifeline for their own financial problems, and at no point did they seem to care about their daughter's happiness. The hall was in shock. Emma, pale as a ghost, looked at the screen and then at her parents, who seemed to have aged 10 years in a few minutes. Jack, for his part, maintained a serious expression, almost as if he wasn't surprised. When the lights came back on, the silence was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Mrs. Josephine was the first to speak. "I tried to stop this wedding," said the elderly woman, her voice firm despite her age. "Not because of what you revealed, Jack, but because of what I discovered about my own children. I tried to talk to Emma several times, but Martha always found a way to keep me away. She even medicated my teas so I would sleep during our important conversations." Emma felt the ground collapse beneath her feet. In a single night, she had discovered that her husband was bankrupt and that her parents had pushed her into a marriage out of pure financial interest. It was too much to process. With firm steps, she addressed her parents. "You schemed behind my back? Used me as a bargaining chip? How could you?" Thomas tried to hold his daughter's arm, but she pulled away. "You don't understand, honey. We're desperate. The banks are about to take everything. Your mother has health problems that need expensive treatments. We were thinking of everyone's welfare. Everyone's welfare or your welfare," retorted Emma, tears streaming down her perfect face, now marked by hurt. "Has my whole life been a lie? The encouragement to work on Jack's projects, the coincidences of us meeting at events, was it all orchestrated?" Ryan, the cousin and best man, approached. There was something in his gaze that mixed guilt and determination. "I also need to confess something," he said, looking at Jack. "I knew about their plan. Thomas approached me 6 months ago when you and Emma started. Getting serious. He offered me money to help convince you to set the wedding date earlier." "You?" asked Jack, the betrayal by someone so close adding a new layer of pain to that night. "Why, Ryan?" "I was being blackmailed," Ryan replied, the shame evident in his voice. "I have gambling debts, many debts. Thomas found out and used it against me, said he would pay everything if I helped, and I accepted. Forgive me, cousin." The situation seemed to crumble more and more, revelation after revelation. It was then that one of the few guests who still remained in the hall, Mr. Stanley, a gentleman who worked as a doorman at the first building Jack had constructed, fell to the ground, clutching his chest. "Help! I think he's having a heart attack!" Someone shouted. Immediately, Jack and Emma ran to help. Momentarily forgetting the chaos they were in, they joined forces to aid the gentleman. Jack began performing CPR, while Emma, with admirable presence of mind, directed someone to call emergency services. Long minutes passed until the ambulance arrived. During all this time, the couple worked in perfect sync, as if they were one person. When the paramedics finally took Mr. Stanley, he was already stabilized. "You saved his life," a paramedic told Jack. Few know how to perform such effective CPR. Emma looked at her husband with renewed admiration. In the midst of the worst moment of their lives, he could still be a hero. When they finally were alone on the dance floor, the hall almost empty except for some staff who were discreetly cleaning up, and Mrs. Josephine, who was waiting in a corner, Jack held Emma's hands. "I understand if you want to annul this marriage. Right now," he said. "It was a night of too many revelations." Emma looked at him deeply. "Who sent that video, Jack? You know, don't you?" Jack nodded slowly. "I think so. 3 years ago, I helped a young programmer who was starting his company. He was about to lose everything to an unscrupulous investor. I intervened, not for the money, but because I saw potential in him, and mainly because it was the right thing to do. His name is Tyler Alvarez. He has been monitoring my business since then as a form of gratitude and to alert me to possible problems. I believe it was he who discovered your parents' plan." Emma absorbed the information, a small smile forming on her lips. "So you have a digital guardian angel?" "It seems so," answered Jack. "But that doesn't change the fact that I'm bankrupt and that you discovered you were manipulated by your own family." "Bankrupt?" questioned Emma, an enigmatic gleam in her eyes. "Are you absolutely sure about that, Jack?" Before he could answer, the doors of the hall opened and a young man with glasses and a modern suit entered. Tyler Alvarez, the mentioned programmer, walked towards them with a tablet in his hands. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I think this couldn't wait until tomorrow." He handed the tablet to Jack, who began to read the content with wide eyes. This is impossible," he muttered. "What is it?" asked Emma, worried. "The land in Sunset Bay," explained Jack, still astonished. "The ones I bought 5 years ago that seemed worthless. The government has just approved the construction of an eco-resort in the region. The value of the land has tripled overnight," Tyler smiled. "And that's not all. The investigation into your ex-partner, Oliver, concluded that it was he who sabotaged your last 3 ventures. He diverted funds, forged your signature, drove away investors. All of this is documented and will be presented to the authorities tomorrow." It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from Jack's shoulders. He wasn't bankrupt. He had been the victim of sabotage, and now there was a real chance of recovery. Emma, however, didn't seem as surprised as she should be. "You knew," said Jack, noticing his wife's reaction. "You already knew all of this?" She nodded, tears of relief shining in her eyes. "Tyler approached me a week before the wedding. He showed me the evidence against Oliver and told me about Sunset Bay. I was going to tell you after the honeymoon as a surprise." "Then why did you seem so shocked when I revealed I was bankrupt at the altar?" "Because I didn't expect you to reveal that during the ceremony," she replied with a slight tone of reproach. "I thought you would at least wait until we were alone." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "You mean we got married knowing exactly what situation we were in?" he asked, marveling at this woman's strength. "Exactly. The only thing I didn't know was about my parents' plan," replied Emma, her countenance becoming sad again at the mention of her family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Mrs. Josephine, who had been observing everything from her corner, slowly approached. "My dears, I think I need to tell the rest of the story," said the elderly woman, settling into a chair that Tyler quickly offered her. "There's more to this scenario than you imagine." The couple and Tyler sat around the lady, anxious for what would come next. "Thomas and Martha weren't completely wrong about one thing. They really are bankrupt," began Mrs. Josephine. "The hotels are drowned in debt, and not due to bad management, but because Thomas was the victim of a scam 2 years ago. He invested almost all the family's capital in a supposed international partnership that turned out to be a fraud." Emma felt a pang of compassion for her parents, despite the hurt still present. "Why did they never tell me?" she asked. "Pride," answered the grandmother. "Your father has always been too proud to admit his own mistakes, especially to the daughter he raised to be a winner, and your mother, it's well you know how Martha cares about appearances." Josephine adjusted her glasses on her wrinkled face before continuing. When they found out you were dating Jack, they saw an opportunity there. It wasn't something planned from the beginning, but their situation was getting worse, and desperation grew. What started as a hope that the rich son-in-law might voluntarily help turned into a calculated plan to use the marriage as financial salvation. Jack, who was listening attentively to everything, spoke up. That doesn't justify what they did, using their own daughter as a bargaining chip. Of course it doesn't justify it, agreed Josephine. I'm just explaining, not excusing. What they did was unacceptable. I tried to intervene when I found out, but as Emma has heard, I was prevented. Martha even put sedatives in my tea so I couldn't talk clearly with my granddaughter. When I realized what was happening, I tried to contact you directly, Jack, but my emails were never answered. Probably Oliver's doing, commented Tyler. He had access to your corporate email and filtered your messages. Jack shook his head, assimilating all those revelations. It was as if he had lived in a world of shadows, and now, finally, light was beginning to enter. There's one more thing, added Mrs. Josephine. Something about the prenuptial agreement. Emma frowned. She and Jack had signed a standard prenuptial agreement protecting each one's individual assets before marriage. What about the contract? She asked. Your father included a special clause, explained the grandmother. If you divorce within the first 2 years of marriage, Jack is obligated to pay a considerable amount as compensation, regardless of the reason for the separation. That's absurd, exclaimed Emma. How could he do that without consulting me? He convinced the lawyer it was an agreement between the three of you, replied Josephine. And since you signed without carefully reading all the pages. Emma felt her blood boil. This was the height of betrayal. It wasn't enough to push her into a marriage of interest. Her father had also set a legal trap. Is there any way to nullify this clause? Jack asked Tyler, who was already consulting something on his tablet. Yes, but it would take time and could generate a lot of public exposure, replied the programmer. Unless we get divorced right now, completed Emma, surprising everyone. What? Asked Jack, confused. Think about it, she explained. The contract talks about divorce within the first 2 years, but doesn't specify how long after the wedding this divorce should happen, right? Tyler quickly checked the text of the contract. Indeed, there's no specification. It just says, in case of divorce within the first 24 months after matrimonial union. So if we get divorced now, technically we're still within the first 24 months, actually the first 24 hours of marriage. But since you're bankrupt, there's nothing to pay as compensation, concluded Emma, a clever smile forming on her lips. And then we could get married again without any manipulated contract, added Jack, admiring his wife's quick intelligence. Exactly. And when the news about the valuable land and Oliver's sabotage comes out, my parents won't be able to do anything, because the divorce will have already happened, and the new marriage will have new conditions. Mrs. Josephine couldn't contain a laugh. My granddaughter has always been the smartest in the family. That's why I'm so proud of her. At that moment, a silent decision was made between Jack and Emma. They would face together whatever came, starting with this strategic and immediate divorce, followed by a new marriage, this time truly based only on the love they felt for each other. The next morning, to the astonishment of all who were still commenting on the wedding scandals, the couple publicly announced their divorce. The headlines were merciless. The shortest marriage in high society. Love or interest. The lightning. Divorce of Jack Mercer and Emma Fields. From bankruptcy to divorce, the melancholic end of a romance. What no one knew except for the small circle of trust formed by Mrs. Josephine and Tyler was that this was part of a bigger plan. A month later, in an intimate ceremony held at a small chapel in Sunset Bay, Jack and Emma married again, this time without manipulated contracts, without self-interested guests, only with the presence of people who really cared about them. During that month, a lot had changed. The investigation against Oliver became public and Jack's ex-partner was removed from the company. The land in Sunset Bay really increased in value, allowing Jack to begin his financial recovery. And Emma, determined to keep her distance from her parents, accepted the proposal to start a new architectural project, precisely in Sunset Bay, where they now lived. Emma's parents tried several times to get in touch, but she remained firm in her decision to distance herself. Not out of revenge, but for self-preservation. She needed time to heal the wounds of betrayal and perhaps one day find room in her heart for forgiveness. Ryan, Jack's cousin, who had confessed his participation in the plan, surprisingly turned an important page in his life. He abandoned his gambling addiction, joined a support group, and began to rebuild his career as a photographer, documenting precisely the construction process of the eco-resort in Sunset Bay. And as for Tyler, the programmer who helped unravel all the conspiracies, Jack invited him to be a partner in a new venture, a technology startup focused on sustainable solutions in civil construction. The company soon became a success story, combining Jack's experience in the real estate market with Tyler's technological genius. 6 months after the second marriage, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, Emma and Jack were sitting on the porch of their home in Sunset Bay, enjoying the view of the bay, when a familiar figure appeared at the gate. It was Mrs. Josephine, accompanied by a surprise, Emma's parents. Her heart raced. She wasn't prepared for this meeting, but her grandmother had insisted on the phone that it was important. "Before you say anything, my dear," Mrs. Josephine began as she reached the porch, "they come in peace, and I think you should hear what they have to say." Thomas seemed to have aged a decade since the wedding. His face was thinner, his eyes sunken, his hair grayer. Martha, meanwhile, had abandoned her luxurious attire and ostentatious jewelry. She was dressed simply, something unimaginable for the woman who always valued appearances so much. "Daughter," Thomas began, his voice choked, "we're not here to ask for your forgiveness, because we know what we did is unforgivable. We just came to say that we understand your decision to distance yourself and that we respect it. We discovered in the worst possible way what really matters in life," added Martha, tears flowing freely down her face. "We lost our money, our status, almost all our friends, but none of that compares to having lost you." Emma remained silent, absorbing her parents' words. Jack held her hand, offering silent support, whatever her decision might be. "We sold everything we had left and opened a small inn in Cape Cod," continued Thomas. "Nothing luxurious, just a simple but honest place. We're working hard, starting from scratch, as it should have been from the beginning." "Your grandmother took us in when everyone turned their backs on us," said Martha, looking gratefully at Mrs. Josephine. "She showed us there was still a path, as long as we were willing to accept our failures and start over with humility." Emma finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Do you know how long it took me to build the trust I had in you? And how devastating it was to discover that the people I admired most were willing to use me as an instrument to solve their problems." "We know," replied Thomas, head down, "and that's why we don't expect to be part of your life again. We just wanted you to know that we learned the lesson in the hardest way possible and that we're trying to be better people." There was a long silence, broken only by the sound of waves in the distance and the wind in the tree leaves. "I can't promise that things will go back to how they were," Emma finally said, "but I can say that I'm willing to take small steps. Maybe lunch next week, just to talk more." The relief on her parents' faces was visible. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door left slightly ajar for the possibility of reconstruction. After they left, Emma and Jack remained on the porch, watching the sunset tint the sky in orange hues. "Are you sure?" asked Jack, concerned about his wife's emotional well-being. "No," she answered honestly. "But if there's something I've learned from all this, it's that people can change when confronted with their own failures. You've changed. Ryan has changed. Maybe my parents can too." Jack nodded, once again admiring Emma's ability to see beyond appearances and believe in the possibility of redemption. That night, as they were getting ready for bed, Emma received a message from Tyler. It was a proposal to expand the eco-resort, now including a social project that would offer training and employment for young people in the region. Something that would unite business success with positive impact on the community. "What do you think?" she asked Jack, showing him the message. "I think it's exactly the kind of legacy I want to build with you," he replied, softly kissing her. It was at that moment that Emma realized that all the revelations and betrayals they had experienced as painful as they were, had culminated in something genuinely good. They were building a life based not on appearances or social expectations, but on real values, honest work, purpose, authentic connections. A year passed since that tumultuous night at the Plaza Hotel. The eco-resort in Sunset Bay was almost completed, blending perfectly with the natural landscape and already generating jobs for dozens of local residents. The social project idealized by Tyler was in full operation, offering courses in hospitality, gastronomy, and sustainable tourism for young people in the region. Emma and Jack decided to transform part of their property into a cozy cafe, where resort guests and residents could enjoy local organic coffee and typical regional foods. The place quickly became a community meeting point, a space where people of all kinds felt welcome. Emma's relationship with her parents had evolved slowly. It wasn't what it once was, perhaps it never would be again, but there was respect and a new kind of understanding. Thomas and Martha would visit them occasionally, always bringing some specialty from their small inn in Cape Cod, which surprisingly was beginning to gain recognition for its personalized service and welcoming atmosphere. Mrs. Josephine, now 79 years old, had decided to move to Sunset Bay to be closer to her granddaughter. She lived in a small house on the couple's property and spent her days telling stories to the community children or teaching Emma how to make her famous homemade sweets. Ryan had not only overcome his gambling addiction, but had become an anti-compulsive gambling activist, using his own story to help others. His photographic projects documenting the biodiversity of Sunset Bay had caught the attention of international conservation magazines. Tyler continued to be a valuable business partner, but had also become a close friend of the couple. His sustainable technology startup had received significant investments and was expanding to other American states. On a particularly beautiful afternoon, while organizing a small celebration for Mrs. Josephine's birthday, Emma found Jack sitting alone on the beach, observing the horizon. "A penny for your thoughts," she said, sitting next to him in the sand. "I was thinking about how things have changed in such a short time," he replied, embracing her by the shoulders. "A year ago I was walking into an altar thinking I had lost everything, about to lose the only thing that really mattered, you. And now?" she asked, knowing the answer, but wanting to hear it anyway. "Now I realize I've never been so rich," he replied, looking around. "Not because of the money we recovered or the new businesses, but for having genuine people by our side, for having built something that matters, that makes a difference, for waking up every day with a purpose that goes beyond ourselves." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a peace she had never imagined possible after so much turbulence. "You know what impresses me the most?" she asked. "How that horrible night ended up being the catalyst for all this. If you hadn't had the courage to reveal your supposed bankruptcy at the altar, if that video hadn't exposed my parents, we would be living a lie," completed Jack. "A comfortable lie, perhaps, but still a lie." They remained silent for a few moments, enjoying the sound of the waves and the warmth of the setting sun. "I think we should go back," Emma finally said. "Grandma will get impatient if we delay her party." Jack agreed, standing up and extending his hand to help her. As they walked back to the house where friends and family awaited them, he suddenly stopped. "What is it?" asked Emma, concerned. "Nothing," he replied with a smile. "I just wanted to say that if I had to go through it all again, the bankruptcy, the betrayals, the scandals, I would go through it without hesitation if I knew it would end here, with you." Emma smiled, kissing him softly. "Me too," she said. "Me too." Upon arriving home, they were welcomed by the warmth of the small celebration. Mrs. Josephine, the center of attention, animatedly told stories of her youth. Tyler and Ryan enthusiastically discussed a new project involving drones for environmental monitoring. Thomas and Martha, still a bit out of place, but visibly making an effort, helped serve the guests. It was a scene that none of them could have imagined on that turbulent night at the Plaza Hotel, a scene of imperfect people who had made mistakes, some serious ones, but who were genuinely trying to be better. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. As she observed that small universe of redemption they had created, Emma had an epiphany. True love is not that which flourishes only in moments of glory and abundance. It's that which persists and strengthens precisely in moments of crisis, of vulnerability, of bankruptcy, be it financial or moral. And Jack, as if reading her thoughts, whispered in her ear, "We're much richer now than we ever were with all the bank accounts full." Emma nodded, feeling the profound truth of those words. They had discovered the kind of wealth that no bankruptcy could take away, the wealth of sincere bonds, of shared purpose, of life lived with authenticity. And as the sun set on the horizon of Sunset Bay, tinting the sky with golden and crimson hues, Emma and Jack toasted not only to Mrs. Josephine's birthday, but also to the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. A journey that had begun with a shocking revelation at the altar, "I'm bankrupt," and culminated in the discovery of what really mattered in life. Because in the end, they had learned that there are things that no amount of money can buy. Dignity, honesty, and the courage to start over, even when everything seems lost. 2 years later, the eco-resort in Sunset Bay had become a model of sustainable tourism, receiving international awards for its innovative practices. The cafe managed by Emma and Jack, initially a small side business, was now mentioned in travel guides as a must-visit place for those visiting the region. On a sunny Saturday morning, as they prepared the cafe to open, Emma received a call from Tyler. "You won't believe it," he said, his voice overflowing with enthusiasm. "UNESCO is interested in our sustainable development model. They want to implement something similar in other historical heritage regions around the world." Emma could hardly believe it. What had started as a project of personal and financial recovery could now positively impact communities in various countries. "That's incredible, Tyler. When are they coming to visit us?" "Next week, and there's more. They want you and Jack to be the main consultants for the global implementation." When she hung up the phone, Emma ran to tell the news to Jack, who was arranging tables on the cafe's porch. "This means we would have to travel quite a bit," he pondered after hearing the news. "Yes, but we could take our model to places that really need it. Imagine the impact we could have." Jack smiled, recognizing that gleam in his wife's eyes, the same passion that had made him fall in love with her years ago. "Then I think we need to start packing," he replied, hugging her. That afternoon, as the cafe filled with customers, a mix of enchanted tourists and local residents who already considered the place an extension of their homes, Mrs. Josephine observed her grandson and granddaughter with pride. "Who would have thought," she commented to Ryan, who was photographing the activity for a project on sustainable local commerce, "that wedding disaster would bring us here?" Ryan nodded, adjusting the lens of his camera to capture Emma serving coffee to a group of local artisans, her radiant smile lighting up the environment. "Life has a funny way of teaching us its lessons," he replied. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what we really have." Night fell over Sunset Bay, and the cafe transformed for a special event, the celebration of the 2nd anniversary of the social project they had created. Young people who had gone through the training program now worked at the resort, at the cafe, or had opened their own businesses in the region. It was Jack who gave the main speech, moving everyone with his words. "2 years ago, when we started this project, many thought it was just a form of compensation for everything we had lost. Perhaps it was, at the beginning, but it quickly turned into something much bigger, a mission. A mission to show that it's possible to grow without destroying, to prosper without exploiting, to build without mischaracterizing what makes each place and each person unique." He paused, seeking Emma's gaze in the crowd. "We discovered that true wealth isn't in financial balances, but in the positive impact we cause in the world. And this, my friends, no one can take from us, no matter what happens." Applause echoed through the venue, and many eyes filled with tears. Among those present were Thomas and Martha, sitting discreetly in a corner. The relationship with Emma, although not completely restored, had evolved to a place of mutual respect. They had proven, with much work and humility, that they were capable of change. Later, when the guests had already departed and Jack and Emma were tidying up the place, Tyler appeared with a special bottle of wine. "I think we deserve a small private celebration," he said, placing the bottle on the main table. To toast to the future. The three sat on the porch under the starry sky of Sunset Bay. As they talked about plans for the global project, Emma couldn't help but reflect on the path that had brought them there. "You know what's funny?" she said, twirling the wineglass between her fingers. "If someone had told me on that wedding night that in 3 years we would be here, with all this we've built, I would never have believed it." "Life rarely follows the script we plan," replied Tyler thoughtfully. "Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as catastrophes." Jack raised his glass, proposing a toast. To the bankruptcy that was never really a bankruptcy, to the lie that led us to the truth, and to the future we're building together. The three toasted, their glasses clinking under the moonlight that reflected on the tranquil waters of the bay. That night, lying in the hammock on the porch of their house, Emma and Jack watched the stars in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "What are you thinking about?" Jack finally asked, caressing his wife's hair. "I was imagining what our life would be like if you hadn't had the courage to tell the truth at that altar," she replied. "If we had gone through with the wedding without all those revelations, we'd probably be in a penthouse in New York," he pondered, "living a life of appearances, surrounded by people who only care about our status." "I would be working on grandiose, but empty projects," added Emma, "and you would continue to be sabotaged by Oliver without ever finding out. And we would never have known the true value of the people around us," concluded Jack. "Ryan would still be drowning in gambling debts. Tyler would just be a young entrepreneur I helped once. Your parents would remain trapped in their own web of lies. And we would never have discovered what we're really capable of when we lose." "Everything except each other," said Emma, nestling closer to him. The gentle night breeze rocked the hammock, bringing the aroma of the sea and tropical flowers that surrounded the property. It was a simple life in many ways, certainly simpler than they would have imagined for themselves years ago. But it was an authentic life, full of meaning. "Do you regret it?" asked Jack, although he already knew the answer. "Not for a second," she replied, raising her face to look him in the eyes. "And you?" "The only regret I have," he said, smiling, "is not realizing sooner that true wealth was right in front of me all along." They fell silent again, rocked by the sound of the waves and by each other's warmth, gratitude filling their hearts for the winding path that had brought them exactly where they should be. The next morning, Emma woke up early and went to the beach to watch the sunrise, a ritual she had adopted since they moved to Sunset Bay. It was her moment of meditation, of connection with something greater than herself. Sitting on the sand, watching the first golden rays appear on the horizon, she couldn't help but smile at the irony of it all. It took a supposed financial and family failure to free them to discover their true vocation, their true home, their true purpose. Jack found her there, bringing 2 cups of fresh coffee. He sat beside her in silence, respecting that special moment for her. Only when the sun was completely above the horizon, bathing the beach with its golden light, did he speak. "I have a proposal for you." Emma looked at him with curiosity. "And what would that be? What do you think about renewing our vows? Here, on this beach, just the 2 of us, and maybe some of the people who have become truly important in our lives." Emma's eyes filled with tears. It was perfect. A true fresh start, without external pressures, without social expectations, just the pure and sincere love they had cultivated through all the storms. "I would love that," she replied, kissing him softly. A month later, on the same beach where Emma used to watch the sunrise, a small ceremony was being prepared. There was no extravagant decoration, just some handcrafted lanterns made by the young people from the social project and tropical flowers picked from the garden of the house. The only guests were those who truly mattered: Mrs. Josephine, Tyler, Ryan, some young people from the project who had become part of the family, and yes, Thomas and Martha, who had demonstrated through consistent actions their genuine remorse and change. There was no minister or judge. They didn't need legal formalities. They were already officially married. This ceremony was for themselves, a celebration of the path traveled and a promise for the future. Dressed in a simple white cotton dress, And with bare feet in the sand, Emma walked to Jack, who was waiting for her at the water's edge, also in white, a radiant smile lighting up his face. When she reached him, Jack took her hands and spoke from the heart. 3 years ago, at an altar very different from this one, I told you I was bankrupt. It was the most difficult and most liberating moment of my life. Today I want to make another revelation. I have never felt as rich as I feel now, by your side. Not because of the successful projects or the recognition we've achieved, but because, together we've discovered what truly matters. I promise to continue being honest with you, even when the truth is difficult. I promise to remember every day that our greatest wealth is what we build together, with integrity and true love. Tears flowed freely down Emma's face as she responded, "On that day when you revealed you were bankrupt in front of everyone, my response was instinctive. I chose you, regardless of the circumstances. Today, after everything we've lived through, that choice is even more conscious and profound. I choose you not only in moments of crisis or moments of glory, but in every ordinary moment we share. I promise to continue walking by your side, building a life that has meaning not just for us, but for all those we touch. And I promise to always remember that true love isn't just that which shines under spotlights, but that which illuminates the path when everything else is dark." They exchanged simple rings, made by a local artisan with sustainably harvested wood, perfect symbols of the new path they had chosen. And when they kissed, sealing that renewed promise, the sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky with vibrant hues of orange, pink, and purple, a natural spectacle that no millionaire decoration could surpass. The small celebration that followed was simple, but full of genuine joy. Local music, food prepared with ingredients from the region, sincere conversations and true laughter. There were no expensive gifts or ostentatious displays, just the presence of those who truly cared. At one point, Mrs. Josephine, who was observing everything with eyes shining with emotion, approached the couple. "You know what moves me the most in all this?" she asked. "Seeing how you transformed a situation that could have destroyed both of you into something so beautiful and meaningful." "You always believed in us, Grandma," replied Emma, hugging the elderly woman. "Even when everyone doubted." "Because I always saw beyond appearances," said Josephine, looking affectionately at Jack. "And I knew this young man had his heart in the right place, even when he himself doubted it." When night fell, and the small party continued under the light of handcrafted lanterns, Emma and Jack moved a little away, walking along the shoreline. "So," he said, intertwining his fingers with hers, "what do you think about starting to think about expanding our family?" Emma's heart raced. They had talked about having children, but always as a distant possibility, something for when they were ready. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked, though she already knew the answer in her heart. "I think I've never been more ready for anything in my life," he answered sincerely. "We've built something solid here, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually. We're surrounded by people who truly support us. And more importantly, we know what truly matters. What better legacy could we leave for a child?" Emma felt a wave of emotion course through her body. The idea of creating a life in this environment they had built, with the values they had discovered through their journey together, seemed perfectly right. "Yes," she replied simply, tears of happiness shining in her eyes. "Let's expand our family." They sealed this new promise with a kiss, under the starry sky of Sunset Bay, the sound of the waves a silent witness to another chapter, beginning in their extraordinary story. A year later, little Nathan was completing 3 months of life. With Jack's dark eyes and Emma's luminous smile, he had instantly become the center of the couple's universe and the darling of the entire community they had built around them. The UNESCO delegates had come and gone, impressed with the sustainable model that Jack and Emma had implemented. The project was being replicated in 6 different countries, with the couple occasionally traveling as consultants, always with little Nathan in tow. Thomas and Martha, now proud grandparents, had moved to a nearby house. The small inn in Cape Cod continued to operate, managed by a young couple they had trained, another training project they initiated, inspired by the success of the Sunset Bay program. Mrs. Josephine, at 81 years old, still had energy to tell stories and teach traditional recipes. She had become a kind of guardian of local wisdom, helping to preserve the cultural traditions of Sunset Bay while supporting her grandson and granddaughter's sustainable initiatives. Ryan had married one of the teachers from the Social Project, a marine biologist dedicated to preserving the region's ecosystems. Together, they coordinated an environmental education program for local children. And Tyler, though still single, had found his own form of happiness, dividing his time between developing sustainable technologies and mentoring young programmers from underprivileged communities. On a tranquil afternoon, as Emma cradled Nathan, on the house porch, Jack arrived from a meeting with new social investors interested in expanding the educational project. "How did things go?" she asked, watching her husband approach with a smile on his lips. "Better than we could have hoped," he replied, sitting beside her and gently caressing their sleeping son's head. "They want not only to invest, but to learn. They're genuinely interested in how to replicate our model in other communities." Emma smiled, a feeling of fulfillment filling her heart. "You know what I've been thinking?" she said after a moment of contemplative silence. "How ironically perfect it is that everything started with a revelation of bankruptcy." Jack nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "We had to hit rock bottom to discover how we really want to live. And now we're helping others discover the same," she completed, looking tenderly at the son sleeping in her arms, the most perfect representation of the future they were building together. That night, as Nathan slept peacefully in his crib, Jack and Emma sat on the porch as they did almost every night, enjoying the stars and the sound of the distant sea. "I don't think I ever properly thanked you," said Emma, breaking the comfortable silence. "For what?" asked Jack, intrigued. "For having the courage to tell the truth at that altar, even knowing you might lose me because of it." Jack smiled, remembering the fear he had felt at that moment, the certainty that he was destroying his own happiness. "The truth is that I had no choice," he replied honestly. "I couldn't have lived with the lie, no matter how comfortable it might have seemed." "And it was that honesty that built all this," she said, gesturing to the world around them. "The cozy house, the prosperous business, the united community, the family they had formed. I think the lesson we learned is that true wealth can only be built on a foundation of truth," reflected Jack, "no matter how painful that truth might be at the moment." Emma nodded, leaning back against her husband's chest. "I'm happy we learned that lesson together." And as the moon rose in the sky of Sunset Bay, gently illuminating the path they had traveled since that tumultuous night at the Plaza Hotel, Jack and Emma knew, with a certainty that transcended any doubt, that they had found the true meaning of wealth, one that no bankruptcy could ever take from them. End of story. So what did you think of this story of love and overcoming? If you've ever experienced moments where honesty was difficult but necessary, share in the comments. Would you have the same courage as Jack, or the same understanding as Emma? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart.